Thanks.
And then I was thinking maybe the time worked a little bit better for you, Susan, because it's a little bit later.
Yeah, but that's fine. I think it should work for everybody else. I'll make it work. Whatever
Or
time.
if people want to completely, now that we're all entering new grant periods, if people want to change the date and time completely or keep it where it is, we can spend a few minutes talking about that if you want.
Okay.
I'm completely
Well, this
open.
is Dawn. I like the noon, and that's fine. And I could do 12:30, except for today, because it just didn't work out for today. I have to be off at 1 o'clock.
Okay.
So keeping Fridays is fine with me.
Well, we'll go back to noon if it probably worked. It was working all that time. Why mess with it now? So I'll change it all back to noon.
Okay.
Does that work for you too, Yuta?
I think so. I don't know what time zone you're talking about. So right now it's 9:30 for me, and this works. So
Yeah.
when you're saying noon, would it be earlier?
Yeah,
It
that
would
would be
be 9 a.m.
9 for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, 9 or after the time change 8, right? 10. Yeah, no, that's fine. Friday mornings are typically good.
Okay.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay. Okay, so what I'd like from all of you, just to kind of bring us back to the topic of sustainability, is just talk about anything you've been able to work on, maybe not much actually at a distance, but we're still interested in that given COVID. And then when you give your update, if you have any information to share about changes in your respite programs, services, or policies related to COVID, we'd really love to hear those. And if you've made any changes, adaptations, we're wondering if you think that any of those will be permanent going forward. And then the last one, you may need time to think about this, but I'm wondering if you're thinking about respite, like the meaning of respite, or anything about respite has changed as the result of the last 6 months. So
Can I add another question? We may not get through it all today, but I wanted to ask if people, now that you have your approved grant for the coming 3 years, what you may have included in your sustainability plan in your proposal that's different from what you're doing now. Getting back a little bit more to sustainability issues too. I don't know, maybe we can table that for next time, but I think that would be important to talk about as we kick off the new grant period. If there's something new that you're all going to be doing that you proposed in your last grant.
okay, anybody want to pop in?
Dora should
Sure,
probably go
I'll start.
first if she has to leave. Yeah.
Okay.
You asked a lot of questions there, so you might have to walk me through them again. But
Oh, that's, yeah.
some of the changes that we've made are, well, we had a batch of mini grants out there, and they were all for in-person respite. And so, of course, not one of them is able to meet their goals. So we asked for a no-cost extension from ACL, and it was granted. And so the meaning of respite is wide open for a lot of people, and all the technology and the webinars. So we've given permission to the many grantees to kind of decide how to use that money now in the virtual world, whether it be for providing program supplies or doing the webinars or whatever that is. So they have until August 31st to be able to either meet the goals of the last grant or modify and just prove that they're and report on how they're making the lives of caregivers a little bit less burdensome.
Okay.
And then we have, for the next round, we have a ton of mini grants going out, and that one is specifically related to how they're being creative in providing respite to caregivers in light of COVID.
Oh, nice.
What was the other question?
If you're thinking about respite differently as a result, I mean, this is kind of going on for a long time. We're not sure how long it will last. Do you think respite will be changed in your state in some way more permanently?
I don't see how it can't be. I mean, we've all learned so much about the virtual world and how to stay in touch with caregivers and kind of rethink what respite can be. I don't see how some of that can't remain permanent because we've come so far with great innovative thinking.
Oh, that's interesting, Doris. So do you think that some of this has brought some good changes to respite?
I think it's forced us to be creative and think outside the box and do things that we never thought about doing before.
Okay.
Certainly it has for us.
How will this new little batch of funds from ACL help you do all that? Or will
This
it?
new little batch? It
What?
will. We have such big plans. You're talking about the next round or the
Well,
little?
The little bit they just
got-
released, the little bit they
Yeah.
released to all of you in September.
Yeah. How are we using that? I'm on my way to a meeting to talk about all that, so I really ought to get it straight in my head. We've added that to our next round of mini grants, which goes out at the end of this month. So we're actually going to be able to put out 120,000 in mini grants.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
It is. It's awesome.
And the other question I wanted to know about now that you've submitted your new sustainability plan with your last proposal, did you incorporate anything new in there in your sustainability planning efforts that you're going to be doing?
Well, we're really going to work hard to reach out to our kinship caregivers and develop a voucher program specifically for kinship caregivers. We are talking about adding a part-time data person because we are doing so much data collection that we can't keep up with it and still move forward. So in order to sustain us and move us forward, we could use a little help. That's what I'm about to pitch to my boss. So, and then for our sustainability summit, we're now talking about maybe bringing 50 people in instead of our 150 or 125 that we usually do, and live stream the rest of the conference. So that's something I'm working on right now, and that's specifically for our sustainability summit. And the other thing that we're doing is doing monthly webinars for professionals who support caregivers to give them more tools and resources, particularly in this time, to be able to deliver services better. So we're doing a professional webinar series.
So your sustainability plan may look a little bit different, huh, from pre-COVID days?
Well, I think, yeah, to some degree, but you know, like we've always said, it's a living, breathing thing. It's got to
Right.
change, you know, with the times.
Yes.
So that I don't see as different. We have to be flexible and we have to really work on it. We haven't come together for a specific sustainability annual routine. So we haven't put the bones around it yet, but it's there because for respite to be sustained, it has to be grown all the time.
Right.
Especially when you're dealing with these volunteer models where your volunteers roll in and out. We need to be able to keep on top of that better. That's one of our biggest challenges. Especially with the mini grants coming up, you got to stay on top of them to get their data.
Okay, that's wonderful. And just to link this to sustainability, I've been working on the COVID study with the wonderful Kim Whitmore, and
Yep.
One of the things that we've discovered is that some programs weren't able, or for some reason, we don't know the reason, didn't change, didn't adapt, stopped giving services. The majority are doing what you're doing, and that to me says something good about the strength of the system. and that and the sustainability of the system. People are keeping things going in one form or another. So I've got another question for you. I was thrilled to hear you talk about how much data collection you're doing, and that you want to hire a new data collector. And I'm wondering if you're able to capture any of the changes, because there's so many changes in services during these fluid times. Do you have any notion how that is affecting caregivers or actually providers too? How they're coping, how they're faring, whether or not the changes are beneficial?
Well, it's funny because I was talking with my advisory committee last week, and I was telling them about the respite research that's going on. And I said, I think what we really need to understand is, I mean, how effective, it's great that we're doing all these webinars and that we're, you know, doing exercise classes and all the things that could be, that are happening, but we don't really have any data telling us that it's helping caregivers or not.
Right.
So
Exactly.
that's kind of one of the things that I really would like to focus on, because
Right.
in our evaluation, because it's great to do it and you think you're doing wonderful and great things, but if your caregivers aren't responding or getting the break they need, it's not that effective. It's great, it's extra stuff, but it's not meeting the need of the actual respite.
Right.
So we're doing powerful tools. We just started doing a few powerful tools classes through the coalition, and I have a guy in one of my classes who is just so stressed out, and I mean, his wife has Lewy bodies, she's hallucinating, and he's the only one there. He's trying to work from home, and so we're offering powerful tools classes online, but he's hiding in the basement to be able to do it.
Yeah.
And how effective is that? That's the one that really hit home for me when I was thinking about whether or not all these interventions are actually helpful. So I think that it's definitely ripe for research.
Yes. Oh, I'm thrilled you're thinking about this. This is fantastic.
We hope we're going to cover that at our research summit next week too.
Yeah.
Oh, good. I'll be there.
Yes.
Good. So thanks, Doris. So Nadine
Sure.
or Yuta?
Hey, I'm kind of like Doris. You're going to take me through. I think some of the changes that we made on the respite side was we used to say that they had to hire for the respite provider, an individual outside of the home. And because of COVID, if they have someone that's 18 or over living in the home that's not the primary caregiver, then we're allowing them to hire them as the caregiver provider. And we were one of the few states that had a income limitation, and we have ceased that. We're not asking income anymore. So that's been good. We did get approval during this time to do care boxes for those caregivers. And so we do like the coloring books, lavender lotions, healthy snacks, PPE, those kind of things we put in the care boxes. So
Nice.
we were able to do that with carryover funding. So that's kind of the things I see, those things staying, except for the family member. I think to me, it's very important that the loved one get to visit with somebody else when the caregiver leaves. So after COVID, once it gets out of here, I think we'll go back to asking them to hire a provider outside of the home. Some of the good things that have come out of this, our webinars and conferences and anything we have is just tripled the attendance. And it makes sense. I mean, when you think about it, the caregivers can do it there in their home. They don't have to worry about transportation and things like that. So I'm sure we'll continue those, and we may have some, live person things also, but the webinars have definitely been great. our senior companion program with one of our agencies has folded, and they have contacted me to see if I had any ideas on how we could keep those senior companion individuals working. And I suggested Oklahoma has never had a care provider registry. So we're going to pilot with them to continue so those senior companions can continue to work. I mean, basically get paid with a voucher program. So we're working towards having maybe a registry here in Oklahoma finally.
Oh, that's,
We've kept hands off on that because we didn't want the liability, but they already have all that in place, this agency, to take care of the fingerprinting and the background checks. So we're excited about that. Our website, we have a respite locator, but now we're about to add a support group locator. We're finding that's really, really needed through COVID. They need to talk to others. So
Yeah.
we're about ready to put that on our website. As far as sustainability, what I added to our grant application was I'm exactly what Doris is saying. We've had to hire someone else to do our data collection. I see the importance of that, especially here in our state. One of the things we're doing is that there's 10 respite opportunities here in Oklahoma. And when we all talk all the time, but when we talked about who's pulling data, who's doing pre and post surveys, nobody. We're the only ones. Lifespan's the only one doing pre and post surveys to gather any data. And, I was just like, how? And most of these are state funded. And I'm like, if we all would pull together and get data, we would have something to go to our legislators with. So
yes.
I'm pushing that really hard, talked about that in the grant application, and talked about how we are actually putting together a phone app to where caregivers can call and go through the app and get to the right respite provider to support them with their respite issues. But on the front end of that, my request was we do a pre-survey, and then after so many months we do a post-survey, or after so many vouchers, and they're all on board. So that's where we start getting our data. And because we're all kind of coming together, that's going to help. And so that's what I added to my sustainability and my grant application, this process and the need for data collection to plead our case to legislators or to big businesses or to anybody. Because
Yes.
I have some data, but I'm a little bitty program compared to all these other programs.
Yes.
And if we'd come together, we'd have some real ground to stand on.
Yes.
So,
wow,
to
that's
answer-
marvelous. So are
to
you going to
answer-
try and do like common data elements across those
Yes.
programs? Fantastic.
Yes, that's the goal.
Yeah. So one of the things that's unsaid, but whenever I hear you talk, is that you're able, as a state across programs, and maybe it's you, Nadine, I don't know, you may be like the Jill if we ever lose you or we're lost. But you see things and do things pretty, I don't know if easily, but readily in your state. And I've been reading about leadership, and I've started to think about leadership as like leadership, partnership, and fellowship, and all those elements are important. And I'm just wondering if is that something that happens in Oklahoma? Is it something about the way you do business? How does that,
I
how
mean,
does that happen?
it's been earned. I mean, I've been in the system for 30 years here.
Yeah.
And started at Area Agency on Aging and have been in the state office. So there's not very many people I don't know.
Yeah.
And have always been in a position to build coalitions or resources and that kind of thing. So I've always had my fingers in a lot of things. So I know a lot of people, and that just comes with time. It's nothing I do special. It's just that I've 30 years in a system like this. they either embrace you or they run from you. And so, and that is kind of my niche. I kind of like to, I never have, even in my personal world, never little parties. They're always big parties, bring everybody in, the more the merrier.
You're
So,
inclusive.
Yes, very much so. And so I think that's the key. And I do, right now I'm overseeing other programs that are very, they can feed off each other. And so I just think that's huge. And working at the state office on aging here in Oklahoma, again, I'm just in a perfect position to be doing this. So it's nothing special about me. It's just a lot of years of it's been good.
Good. Let's see if we missed anything from you.
You got to be in that position for 30 years though, Nadine, because you're so good at building those relationships.
Yeah.
Well, I
It
hope
takes
so.
a lot of skill.
Well, and I like I said, it's they either embrace me or they run from me. Not many if they run, they're not going to go far. I will run them down. They know that. And people, if I call them, I'll say, don't even try to say no. I'm not going to take it. And they know. I mean, I have fun with them. And so it's a good relationship. But, they've learned not to say no. Just say, what do you want? And I have to say too, my bosses have always been phenomenal. They've let me do what I need to do. And never have I been told no, but I know my limits, I know, but I've always been, and I know some have not had that freedom, but I've got a lot of freedom to do what I need to do. And again, I'm in a great position. I can't ask for anything more. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So
Well, I'm going to jump in and say goodbye. I'm sorry I have to go.
I'm
we're
sorry.
glad-
I'm
we're
sorry
glad
I
for a
changed
while.
the time. I'm sorry I had to change the time this week.
Take
That's
care,
okay.
Doris.
Bye, Doris.
Thanks, guys.
I think we lost Sharon too, did we? We didn't get to even talk to her.
Oh, darn.
She had to. Sharon, who was the head of the Nebraska Lifespan Respite Network for many years,
Yeah.
doing amazing things there with just state money, has moved to Illinois, retired and moved to Illinois, and now she's working as a home care worker. Completely getting at it from the other end, she
Yeah.
really wanted to work directly with people. So
That's wonderful.
maybe she'll join us again next month.
I hope so. I miss her. So you were forming some new partnerships the last time we talked several months ago. Give us an update about what's going on with you and any changes due to COVID.
Okay. I think changes are pretty similar to everywhere else. So, I think I'd mentioned before that we're just offering our vouchers to, we're allowing dual enrollment, so to say. So people who were enrolled in the day center program, we let them apply for the voucher. We actually continue to see that we've gotten quite a few applications, but relatively few people actually use the voucher. And we do allow, friends and neighbors and family members. We have not allowed family members in the home, but actually that has not come up to the best of my knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So our program, remains pretty small, although I must say our area agencies are very busy. They get a lot of extra funding, and so I think they're helping a lot of families. The whole state, so Arizona has lots and lots and lots of offerings. And I think I brought this up once before, how does one coordinate all these things? Because the Alzheimer's Association is active. We have the Banner Alzheimer Institute. We have AERP, who has made caregiving their #1 priority here in the state. And so there's just a lot going on. Which is good. It's almost to the point of where you can't even keep track of who is offering what. What we are hearing is, I think somebody said this earlier, that attendance at some of these online, events and meetings and support groups seems to be up for some things, So do not know at this point if organizations are going to continue with the online delivery. Some are saying that there's a little bit of fatigue, with the webinars. And I'm noticing even in meetings that more and more people keep their camera turned off. So for me today, I don't know if you all are on camera. I'm in the office. I get free space from the state, and so we just don't have cameras here on our computers. I don't have a good impression yet of where, as a state, we seem to be heading. Do we keep a lot of the online virtual activities? I suspect some of them will remain online. And what's happening, so with our own plans for our Family Caregiver Day, which is actually next March, it will be virtual, but what we're looking forward to actually is what we hope is to really be more statewide, where our event used to be, because it was in person, it was very local. And I think, so we're trying to be consciously reaching out to the rest of the state, and I think some of the other organizations in the state are doing the same thing, right? They're finding that by just publicizing their event, they can actually get participation from families that may have not been able to have any activities in the past in person, because Arizona has a lot of rural areas with sometimes long distances to drive.
Yeah.
So in that regard, the virtual thing is actually helpful. We do have, so in regards to sustainability, it's sort of a combination of challenges but also opportunities. The state did get the new grant. But for the coalition, so we have received extra funding from the state, and I still don't have a contract. So we've been working since July 1 on these programs, and I still don't have a contract. I think we're close, but there's a lot of talk about state funding becoming uncertain. So I think it's becoming really high priority for us to seriously look at the sustainability. And so one way, and we've discussed this with the state already, so one way we're looking at is to try to really do a lot more volunteer work. I've had to let all my staff go, by the way. And so I'm by myself. So that's the biggest challenge. I'm here by myself.
Yeah.
And I have 2 interns. I've got a couple of volunteers to help just a little bit. And I'm hoping to hire a volunteer coordinator. And so we're in that kind of odd in-between state that the state, even in the current contract, which I'm hoping we're changing, they want to say they want us to run our resource line and operate, and do all the intake for the lifespan respite programs. But they want me to find volunteers and funding. And so I'm saying, okay, wait a minute. Either the state contracts with me to do this, right, or I do this and it's my program. So we're in that really odd transition state. Yeah. So we do have funding for this year. Not sure what it's like next year. So one thing we're looking at, like I said, I'm going to hire a volunteer coordinator and try to, work towards having more volunteers. We have received a small AmeriCorps planning grant. And the idea is to prepare for, a big AmeriCorps grant that we would apply for next year. So again, that's one thing we're looking at, is how could we possibly create this AmeriCorps force, I guess, you
Yes.
know, possibly in conjunction with some of the rural area agencies on aging and maybe some other organizations, to use, you know, AmeriCorps members, we're supposed to call them, to provide either, I mean, at this point we don't know, you know, if there's going to be in-person visits, but anything from just providing information, reassurance calls, you know, coaching on how to use technology, so any and all of those things.
Yeah, that's
Right.
interesting. So, and that could maybe, you mentioned outreach to rural areas when you were talking earlier, so it made me quite, you know, wonder if you're aware of what the gaps are. You said there are a lot of services, lots going on in aging, but are you aware of underserved populations or gaps in services throughout the lifespan? Do you have any notion of that? And could maybe that AmeriCorps grant address some of those?
Yeah, I don't have as much knowledge as I'd like to. We are pretty sure that some of the smaller, more rural areas, you know, like southeastern Arizona, for example, right, has a very low number of populations. The area agency is very small there, and they have indicated, for example, that they just cannot support enough volunteers by themselves, right? So we know we have probably 2 or 3 area agencies that are in that situation, you know, where maybe in collaboration, you know, we can use AmeriCorps volunteers to help them, you know, provide some services. In terms of the population themselves, unfortunately, I don't have good data. We know we have a lot of small towns. We have here in Arizona, we have a number of like mobile home parks that are literally way out in the desert somewhere.
Right.
You know, and so there are probably underserved populations, the tribal areas, you know, like 20% of the state or more is tribal land. So they probably, you know, we should look at them as a gap area. So yeah, I mean, I think there's potential, but there is, you know, I am aware of that, and you know, and I'm just trying to learn more and try to get a handle on it, that there is so much available here in Maricopa County, which is our central county around the city of Phoenix, and Maricopa County has about 60 to 65% of the state's population, right? Almost to the point where, and sometimes there's organizations even talk about that they're competing with each other, right? Competing for funding, competing for participants, competing for speakers. So, you know, it's a blessing on the one hand, you know, on the other hand, it's very focused here. So we may try to the extent of our ability. Like I said, it's going to be me and a volunteer coordinator. The state has been pretty hands off. I guess they're busy. They cannot assist much with this. So anyway, but there's opportunities to do this, and we do have a committee established, and I think that's what you were talking about earlier too.
Good.
So we have, and it's going to be in our contract too, and you know the state is supporting it, and we've actually dusted off an old state statute that was created, I don't know, I think 2016. So we have a lifespan respite statute in the state. It was never funded, but the requirement is still there, and the state, like I said, has dug that out, and so, you know, they want to work with us on formally, you know, really putting this in place and potentially creating reporting to the state legislature on this respite committee. So I think we're moving forward in that regard. So
yes, you have some really big, important things going on. It sounds like a really hard time losing staff while you're doing these other things. But if we can help you at all during this time, I know that AmeriCorps planning grant would give you a great opportunity to do some needs assessment that could guide a sustainability plan. That would be a wonderful opportunity. And this, the lifespan respite statute and the planning committee sound really promising, Yuta. I'm sorry you've lost your staff. Is that because of the grant, just the interim time between grants?
Yes, it was partially due to the funding and the delay in contracts and therefore delay in reimbursement.
Right.
But then it kind of bled into into this new phase of us really supposed to be using more volunteers and wanting to use more volunteers. It just kind of happened very suddenly. So,
Right.
but,
Were you involved
yeah.
in writing the federal grant?
I helped out with that to some extent, yes.
Okay, so you have a good idea of what they're supposed to be using the money for, but you just don't know why it's
Oh, yes.
held up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it's no, absolutely. Yes, and I helped shape that, and we're actually excited about some of the things we put in because we're really this time we put a set of chunk of money, which again the coalition, by the way, will be in charge of developing some of these things. So things like emergency respite, overnight respite, looking at the state right now is for the adult day centers is very much focused on the licensed centers. And in addition to the 12 centers we have in Maricopa County, the whole rest of the state, which is huge, is served by like 3 or 4 day centers. And so we want to look at like unlicensed day program opportunities. And so we're going to see this as a pilot through the lifespan respite, and hopefully over the 3 years, that the state will be able to develop some new policies so that the area agencies can work with non-licensed centers. So it may seem like a small thing, but somehow here in Arizona, that would be a big step, right? So yes, I'm aware of what's in the grant, and we will be working with the state on that.
So it sounds like because you want to develop policies, you'll need to do some data collection too to guide that policy development as you try new things.
Yeah. And so somebody was saying that they do, the pre and post. So Arizona actually has a caregiver assessment tool, and we have the statewide database. Unfortunately, not used terribly well.
Yeah.
Again, the lifespan respite program, so the portion that we do here through the coalition, we have faithfully done a very onerous pre-service assessment and the full post-service assessment. And then when I asked for the state, because it's a state system, when I asked, can I get a report, of what has changed from before and after, it can't be done. It's never been set up. And so they're giving me like spreadsheets with raw data, and I can't do anything with that. Plus, It turns out the area agencies, who by now have tens of thousands of clients in that system, they haven't been doing it correctly. Right. So I'm thinking about doing something simple, like maybe just switching to the Zarit burden test, and
eventually what you want to do is what Nadine is doing. Nadine, you might want to talk about that, the common data elements across state programs.
Well, and what I would suggest is the way we get data is for them to get their first voucher, they have to fill the pre-survey out. If they don't fill out the pre-survey, they don't get a voucher. And we don't like to be that hard-nosed, but it's not a huge survey. And then if they want to get their third voucher, which is for us, we do $400 every 3 months. If they want to get their last voucher basically for the year, they have to do a post. Okay. And that's just the way it is. And otherwise, you're not going to get data.
I'm not sure you have to do anything as complicated as the Zarit burden survey. A lot of our grantees have very simple pre and post respite tools that I'm sure they'd be willing to share. And we've got a lot of them up on the Lifespan Respite Tools page.
Yeah.
And that's
Okay,
where I
yeah, I may
actually,
look at that.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
actually where I
the
developed
state for some reason, so we have this extremely long, I called it onerous, right? It takes half an hour to administer over the phone. It's many, many questions, very invasive, you know,
Yeah.
like asking things like, you know, have you found yourself yelling at your loved one? You know, do you
Yeah.
take
Oh,
drugs and drink alcohol because of the caregiving? It's very
Yeah.
invasive. Everybody hates it. But the state had at one time contracted with a university to create this, and now they do this year after year, and
no, that's not good because you're trying to build a relationship at the beginning. I mean, one of the issues we have is building trust with people to use vouchers to enter the respite system. And, you know, I know this with my brother who's been caregiving for 30 years and he won't use respite. And the last conversation I had with them is that, yes, most people don't want to use it, but once they do, they can't live without it. And I could hear him like being quiet and just hearing that, yeah, nobody wants, you're vulnerable, it's private. So to use a questionnaire that's so invasive at the very beginning of a relationship is like, it's a bit brutal, isn't it?
Of course, this puts us at odds with the entire national caregiving movement, whose biggest issue is we must be doing better caregiver assessments.
Well, I think I diverge, but you know, when I ran a crisis respite nursery, I had this long, complicated risk assessment that eventually we used in Washington State, and Head Start adopted it. And it had that kind of information. But what I would do is when I talked to a new family, I would say, the families in our program have encountered really difficult life circumstances, and I'd give them some examples. And virtually every person I talked to told me their life story. And I would have my checklist there and quietly check things off without ever asking directly. Now, you may miss a little bit of data, but you also get a whole lot of data with the family having the choice of sharing, you know, their experiences with you. So I think there are ways to get that data, but it's not not having your clipboard and asking somebody about domestic violence or, you know, substance abuse before you know them. I just think that's a poor way to go about it and totally disrespectful of caregivers and families.
So maybe I'll check the website for some other samples, and then, you know, maybe take that to the state and see if they'll relent and let me use something shorter and simpler.
Yes, and call us if you have questions or you need help with that, like selecting a tool. I'm not the best person, but Jill, Cassandra Furman are both really good. After the research summit, though, we won't talk to you till after the research summit.
Yeah. The one other thing is not.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to bring up a different point. So go ahead, Jill.
No, I was just going to say on the data collection tool, Cassandra we had a data work group before you joined the group, and put together for ACL, at ACL's request when we were administered by a different agency, some ways to collect some of that information, some actual tools where you can use to input the data. And I'm sorry Sharon left the call too, because she developed an amazing data dashboard in Nebraska that every state agency feeds into with the respite information.
Yes. But you can go online
that's a
and look at
state-funded program that invested a lot of funding in that process.
Yeah. You can go online and look at that, Yuda. You know, we had Brooke from Montana on for about 15 minutes and we lost her, and I'm sorry. I'll reach out to her actually after the call.
Yeah. Okay. I'll look at that. The other thing I was going to bring up again has not necessarily sustainability, but I guess it's more operational. So with more people working remotely, and so me looking at a future of having mostly volunteers, like take our calls, doing the client assessments and intakes over the phone and all that. So we're struggling a bit with just the logistics of that. How do we get the client information to the remotely working volunteers? And so I've been trying to develop some online forms for the intake, but somehow that whole process, I'd love to talk to one or two people in other states who do all this remotely, who have some kind of online forms and even things like, so who's the person who then pulls this all together and makes sure that all the phone calls got answered? So some of those really trivial questions, but I'd love to be able to talk to somebody about such things.
Okay.
Well, are you talking about volunteers to run your caregiver hotline or volunteers to go in and provide in-home respite? What are the volunteers going to be used for?
It's mainly the work on the phone. So the hotline, doing the initial intakes and eligibility assessments, you know, and so we have a central phone number where the calls come in, and we used to answer them live, and we had volunteers in the office, right?
Yeah,
So
I
now
know you
those-
did, yeah.
Right, and now most calls, so I have, so it's my two interns and myself, we still answer the phone live to some extent. Otherwise it goes to an answering service where we get a very convenient, concise email. So I have that, but again, just I'm a little bit overwhelmed by saying, okay, so we get, even it's a small number, let's say 20 or 25 calls a day, they somehow have to now be disseminated out to potentially, I'm going to say 5 volunteers. Somebody has to collect the answers back and compare, you know, did the volunteers actually address those 25 calls? And I know it's nitty gritty, but I'm a little overwhelmed with that piece.
So you're talking kind of about training, logistics, and supervision of the whole process. And it may be nitty gritty, but it is really important because those are contacts with caregivers and families. So,
Well, if Sharon was still willing to talk to you, even though she's not working in Nebraska anymore, she'd be an excellent person to talk to about that, because she ran a statewide, state-funded lifespan program that had 6 regional offices that were staffed by people who answered the phones, you know, to do exactly what you're talking about. They were not volunteers, though. They were paid staff.
Right.
A little different, but
yeah. So Sharon, Yuta, you can find Sharon's email address on the email that you used to log on to this call. Just see if she could spend some time with you.
Right.
she's missing all of us so much. She'd probably love to help you.
And she's also a generous person, but she's a wealth of knowledge about things like that.
Okay, so this is the Sharon Grove?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, I see that. Okay, I may do that, yeah.
And of course, you know, a lot of states are working with their, if they still have ADRCs or no wrong door systems, where they're doing options counseling and screening all the calls. I mean, that's another maybe place you could partner with if that's happening in Arizona. I don't know if it is still.
Yeah, no, it's mainly basically been, you know, it's the area agencies and the state, you know, we get a lot of people who actually come from the kind of the phone tree where they're called a state, and then we are one of the options.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah, so getting the calls in is no problem. It's just more the, you know, the follow-up, making sure all the assessments are done and that we do follow-up, you know, and so.
Yeah, a data system just to keep track of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so maybe reach out to Sharon, and then next month we'll check in and see how that's going.
Okay. All right. I've made a note of Sharon's address.
Of course, you've heard from Oklahoma and New York, who both say they need they have to hire a data person now.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't handle it on their own. So
Yeah, I don't know how much money is available for the planning grant you mentioned, but that's something to think about.
That's true. That's true. Yes, we actually built in a little bit of money for a consultant. So I think, and the two things we're looking at is like a data system and possibly a needs assessment.
Yes, wonderful. And you have good universities where you are, so maybe eventually some partnerships there, student
Right.
interns, or somebody who needs a good, master's or doctoral thesis or dissertation.
Yuta, that's exactly what we do in Oklahoma. We have, well, our grantee for the Lifespan Voucher Program is through the university, and they use grad students to do our research for us, and we get a bargain.
Yeah.
It's a bargain. So we
Okay.
just
So
put
they
in
did
a little-
our national voucher survey for us last year.
Yes, absolutely.
That was
Yes.
great.
Yeah, and we get a great bargain. We get a great product.
Yeah.
So that's a good, and we did just set not a ton of money, but some money aside in this next 3-year grant to fund research students to keep our data up. We just had to.
Yeah. And it's wonderful training for them too.
Yes.
It's like if you can give them some time and get in conversations with them, it's really good for both parties.
Yes, it's a win-win.
Okay.
It's a win-win.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good idea. I may pursue that. Thank you.
Wow, what a good call. Thank you, everyone. If anybody has anything, last parting thoughts, if not, we'll see everyone in a month.
We'll go back to the noon hour,
We'll
Eastern
go back to the
time.
noon hour, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Everyone be safe, be well.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
good weekend.
Thank you. Thank you. These calls are really good for me. Thank you.
Oh, I'm glad to hear
Yes.
that. I'm sorry we missed Brooke though, Susan. You might want to reach out.
Yeah, I will. I'll reach out to her right away.
I'll talk to you later, Susan.
Okay, in an hour.
Okay, bye.
Bye.